Mic check 2 1 2. Seeing if we're really live right now. Just waiting. Mic check 2 1 2. All right, we are live. Give me a second, everybody. I just want to make sure that people know that I'm live. All righty. How is everybody doing? This, of course, your boy Bernie here on The Charge, giving you the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. I do apologize that this is not my usual setup. Luckily, I brought my laptop with me, and it actually doesn't look too bad. This is via the MacBook, so I was a little concerned about streaming on a MacBook, but it seems that it actually works out pretty well. So again, I'm excited to at least stream this for you guys and really talk about the latest news and rumors and also basketball opinions surrounding what I believe was the biggest kind of maybe the biggest bait and switch of the century uh, in Kevin Durant. So before we get started, let me just make sure we're live here and making sure that I can also see the chat as well in case you guys do decide to chime in. So before we do that, guys, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Remember to also check out our newest video. That is, of course, talking about the Kevin Durant, or I should say the Victor Wembanyama video. I'd love for you guys to go check that out. It's a great, awesome watch. So if you guys are interested, go check that out. I think it's a really good video. And again, put a little bit more effort into that one. I'm going to actually have one out hopefully in the next month or so. And then continue to go down the line for some people that I'm curious to look at. There's a player that I'm looking at in this particular draft that I've been watching a lot of video on because there is a lot of scrutiny, a lot of hype, and I'm excited to kind of bring that to you guys when I officially know more about this player and really study this player a little bit more. So with that being said, let's get right into the story of the day. And today, guys, we're going to talk about this Kevin Durant. So the Nets announced that Kevin Durant won't be traded and will move forward with the partnership. Brooklyn Nets have announced that they will not be trading Kevin Durant following a meeting with Joe Tsai, Steve Nash, and Sean Marks in Los Angeles on Monday. Durant requested a trade from the Nets on June 30th, but the Nets were unable to find a deal to meet their asking price. Durant reportedly preferred a trade destination to either Phoenix or Miami, but was opened his list up as the weeks progressed and trades with those teams seemed impossible. Steve Nash and I got together with Joe Tsai. The only fool is KD. Shout out to you, Sean, checking me out, especially here out in Boston. Do appreciate you checking in on the channel. We've agreed to move forward with our partnership. We are focused on basketball with one collective goal in mind, building a lasting franchise to build a championship in Brooklyn. We know Durant is entering 1 year of the 4-year, $198 million contract extension with the Nets last August. We know that, before there was previously reported that he met with the owner Tsai, and then Durant and Irving signed obviously in 2019. So with that being said, this is what I think is really the biggest, and let me make sure I have a good lighting here. I do apologize. Actually, let me see if I can turn on the light. Give me 1 second, everybody. There we go. Get a little bit more lighting in here. So here's what I will say about this whole situation for you guys. What I think is the most frustrating thing about this whole thing is that, we also had people like Patrick Beverley, and actually let me pull up the tweets really quick. And let me see if I can find it. Let's see here. Patrick Beverley. And because he tweeted out earlier, actually, and kind of started a beef with Kevin Durant, and we'll kind of go to his Twitter account. You guys can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Let's make sure. Okay, cool. I think it should be on here. You had a couple guys actually talk about it as well. But here's what Patrick Beverley had to say earlier in the storyline. Here we go. So he says, "Y'all can sit and do and say nothing, but that ain't cool. It's dudes' families out here who haven't gotten a job because of this KD, you know what. And to be on and off ain't cool. Bless gang. It's not a good business. These owners can't wait until the new deals come. All we're gonna do is hurt in the future. Good day, blessing gang." And then Kevin Durant obviously responded by saying #blame KD. And then Patrick Beverley always said, "Sam gang, who said I was talking about you? I'm speaking how it was done. Both sides need to keep that private." Both noted. And this is what I'll have to say about it. I do think that the media has a big What's up, Pete? How you doing, man? I wish if I could find some way to stream you in, I would. But unfortunately, on the Mac, it's a little bit more difficult. But here's what I will say about the KD situation that kind of frustrates me a little bit more is because I'm not going to lie to you guys. I think all of us have been duped by Kevin Durant's sort of trade request because remember what happened with the Rudy Gobert trade. I really think that froze everything because everyone was thinking, okay, if Rudy Gobert is going for this much, how much will Kevin Durant go for? Because this was about the time where Kevin Durant was saying, okay, I'm ready to leave. And the problem with that happening is the fact that we have this situation now with Kevin Durant, who basically said that it's either me or the head coach. And I just think that at the end of the day, I don't think Kevin Durant was ready to show his full cards. Like if push comes to shove, the training camp is going to start relatively soon. I think it might have even started this week. But, you know, as soon as he said that, hey, as soon as this news report, like I knew Kevin Durant wasn't going to go anywhere because if you think about how much money he would have lost by sitting out, which I think some of like Brian Windhorst, I think reported on that. I know that Adrian Wojnarowski hasn't really said anything on that. I actually watched a very interesting video about Adrian Wojnarowski and kind of his insider information as to how he gets that stuff. Apparently, he's really good friends with Sean Marks and anybody that's in the Popovich tree. I'll have to shout that person out who made that video. I actually thought it was really well done and really well researched because I thought it makes sense as to why you see right now that Adrian Wojnarowski hasn't really reported that much on this whole Kevin Durant saga until it finally push came to shove when it was quote unquote real. But I always thought it was fake. The reason, maybe I didn't think it was always fake, but I realized more and more thinking about it now, I realize how fake it really was. Because if you think about how much money Kevin Durant would have lost, we think about how much the Nets would have had to, be satisfied with the offers that they got. I really don't think that this was necessarily the best move for Kevin Durant or the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, think about the Brooklyn Nets, for instance. I think Boston probably gave them the best trade package out of any team out there. Sean, I know you talked about the Hawks eventually trading in. I'm not sure what they would have given up. Probably John Collins and maybe a first round pick here or there. Uh, but I still don't think that was enough to get Kevin Durant. I really do think that the Boston Celtics gave the best package for Kevin Durant, which was, of course, Jaylen Brown and I think Derek White. And to me, that's probably the best package they could have gotten. Again, I know that Kevin Durant is 34 years old. I don't think that that's much of an issue to me. What I think is much of the issue to me is the fact that Kevin Durant basically fooled everybody into thinking that he was going to move or he really wanted to move. Because at the end of the day, Kevin Durant should realize that, at his age, and it's not anything to do with him not being able to play, but at his age, there's not going to be a lot of teams willing to give up a lot of stuff. And we know that the Brooklyn Nets, if they are going to give up Kevin Durant, if they are going to give up these players, they're going to want a lot in return. And they were never going to get that. Just one, due to the age, and two, if this is really how it's going to go down, I really do think that teams are going to start really halting at making these sort of big time trades and really start thinking, okay, well, if Kevin Durant, like I talked about a million times, if Kevin Durant can do this now, what's to say he can't do this in the future? Or like, what's to say he can't do this a year later? Let's say, for example, the Boston Celtics traded for him. What's to say that in Boston he's not really happy or satisfied with the way maybe Tatum or the way that Marcus Smart plays, and then just says, hey, I'm out. I don't want to play here anymore. And I just think that that's kind of where we're at right now with Kevin Durant. Um, and I just think that at the end of the day, the Brooklyn Nets realize that they need to just stick their guns with Kevin Durant unless they're satisfied by not really acquiring that much acquisition. Pete, you said he was trying to get his coach and Sean Marks fired as scapegoats. That was his whole end goal, IMO. Yeah, I think to some extent it was, and that's just due to the fact that Kyrie Irving probably does not like those two. Probably doesn't like Steve Nash, Kyrie Irving. Even though I feel like Steve Nash has been nothing but, I would say, nice to Kevin or to Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Because here's the thing that we have to remember about those two, about Steve Nash. He was the head coach that Kevin Durant picked for them. And to me, when you really step back and think about how much the Brooklyn Nets have really done for Kevin Durant, they've really done a lot of stuff. Like this isn't something where like, oh, we gave him this, we gave him some, small things here and there. No, they gave them everything. And that to me is the ridiculous part about this whole thing, um, stemming from the Kevin Durant situation, is the fact that you have players out here who are trying to, and I think that's the main goal of what Patrick Beverley was trying to say. You have a ton of these players that are out here in free agency. You have guys like Colin Sexton who still haven't been signed to a big contract. You have guys like Isaiah Thomas who's trying to find that last big contract before he probably retires. Patrick Beverley, I think he's in Utah right now. I'm not sure what his situation is. I'm not sure if they're going to release him or not. They probably will eventually, and he'll probably go to the Lakers, is what my guess is. But when you really step back and think about it, nobody could really move the way that they wanted to because Kevin Durant was out there. We talked about the Memphis Grizzlies. Actually, Shams actually reported yesterday talking about how the Memphis Grizzlies could be a team that potentially could go and get uh, Kevin Durant's services. And I think it would have been a very interesting way to get him. I think they probably would have had to give up a lot of pieces. And I'm not sure what the Memphis Grizzlies were willing to give up at that point. So when I really step back and think about it, guys, I think Kevin Durant totally, maybe he didn't orchestrate it, but he definitely put this whole thing out there along with the Brooklyn Nets. I think the Brooklyn Nets just were like, okay, let's just kind of wait it out and see how it plays out. Whereas Kevin Durant was thinking, okay, if it does happen, it is what it is. But if it doesn't, I'll be fine with running it back with Brooklyn. I think the question mark for me now comes to, does Kyrie Irving want to stay in Brooklyn? Because again, I talked about it numerous times before, and I'm not going to lie to you, I was probably fooled as well, along with the rest of the media, is the fact that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, I just feel like that partnership, for whatever reason, I still don't think it works out really well. I think the best relationship is probably Kyrie and LeBron. And you could say that I'm a homer, you could say whatever you want about me being a LeBron James guy, but at the end of the day, I feel like that's a better relationship than I feel like the one that him and Kyrie and KD have, because I just think LeBron is the only guy, in my opinion, that can hold Kyrie accountable for the actions and the stuff that he does. Kevin Durant is too much of a nice guy and is too much of a friend to tell to tell Kyrie Irving, hey, I don't think this is necessarily the best option. And so as we continue to kind of proceed with really monitoring the situation at hand when it comes to the Brooklyn Nets, I think the Brooklyn Nets have done everything that they can to satisfy both Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. As much as we like to criticize these two guys for what, no, some people will blame them and things like that. But the Brooklyn Nets have given these two guys everything. If we think about it, they brought in the head coach, they brought in the players that they wanted, they got, all the kind of inside access for their friends and family. And that's something that no other player is going to get. And again, I talked about it just a little bit earlier in the show. Is another team going to give Kevin Durant that type of, I would say, maybe not privilege, maybe privilege is the right word, give him that privilege or give him that exclusive or, exclusive. Like, are they going to, for example, is Boston going to give Kevin Durant everything that he wants for his friends and family? Who knows? I'm not sure what Tatum gets. I'm sure Tatum wants a little bit more from the Boston Celtics, but I think it's the same thing here. Like, what is to stop Kevin Durant from going to another place and realizing, wow, in Brooklyn I had it all. I had everything. And I just don't think that in any other place Kevin Durant is going to get that, because of the way that the Brooklyn Nets have kind of basically kind of stuck their heels in for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, especially when they gave Kevin Durant the contract extension that he agreed to. Again, I think if Kevin Durant was really worried and concerned, he wouldn't have signed that contract extension and would have waited. But again, money talks. As I think it's every person that does a job, or businessman, CEO, doesn't matter what it is, money does talk. And I just think that when I look at it and see it from a outsider's perspective, and again, I have no inside information on this. This is just me kind of speculating and talking and just trying to make sense of it for myself and maybe for you guys. Maybe you guys have a different opinion on it, but that's really where I'm trying to come with here, is just trying to understand the Brooklyn Nets and Kevin Durant's perspective of this whole thing. Again, I talked about it before. I never thought in my wildest dreams that Kevin Durant, again, for all the things that he's done, for all the things that he has acquired there in Brooklyn, why would you give that up just to go to a different team and maybe don't get the same privileges or the same access that you do here now? And I hope you guys, let me know in the comment section down below, or let me know in the live chat right now what you guys think of this whole thing. Again, I do think that he played everybody. I don't think that he necessarily was here being honest and truthful. I really do think that he was playing these games, and I think that's the reason why you saw Patrick Beverley get so frustrated with him is because you offered, or I should say maybe not offered, but for all the privileges and stuff that you got from the Brooklyn Nets, the fact that at the end of the day you were never really gonna go go through you're never gonna go through the whole missing training camp because you want to get traded. I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't either. If I have 198 million on the line, I'm not giving that up. I'll be showing up to training camp and crossing my I's and dotting my T's in that case. And so I just think that at the end of the day, Kevin Durant, it's a little bit of a bad look. It's a little bit of a sour taste in people's mouth because I think, like Patrick Beverley said, and again, this is from Patrick Beverley, a role player perspective. Um, Let me read Pete's comment really quick. Pete, you said, I do find it a little interesting that essentially the Nets ended up winning this exchange. They played it they played it strict and refused to settle, very similar to 76ers with Ben last year. Player empowerment taking a bit of a hit. I want to say yes, but if we look at Patrick, well, I should say it took a little bit of a hit, but let's keep it in perspective, Pete. Let's look at the way that Patrick Beverley kind of talked about it here. And this is the tweet that I'm talking about here. And let me see if it'll pop up here. It says, it's not good business. The owners can't wait until the new deal comes. All we're doing is hurting the future. I think with I think with this story being sort of, I would say, fake in a sense where Kevin Durant was really not going to move because of all the money that he was guaranteed. But what this does do is that it plants a seed in the owner's eyes and mind, thinking, okay, what's to stop a player from actually doing it? And I could potentially see the owners trying to implement a you know maybe superstar clause into their contracts or something like that, where they have to play a certain amount of games, they have to honor the contract with a certain amount of years. This to me was a very bad. It was a very I don't know what Kevin Durant was trying to do with this, to be honest with you, Pete. Because if I really think about it, what was the whole goal was to get traded to a better team. It ultimately failed because at the end of the day, like I talked about before, the Boston Celtics gave the Brooklyn Nets the best package, and they didn't take it because they know that that's not necessarily enough for them to say, okay, we're going to build around Jaylen Brown. I really do think that this hurt the cause for the players, and with Patrick Beverley talking about this tweet, the owners are probably going to be pissed. I don't think the owners are satisfied or happy with the way that things went here in Brooklyn. I think the owners are thinking, okay, let's put something into the CBA agreement where now these players are really restricted, and then it turns out that the players lose a little bit of that empowerment that they've gained so far throughout the whole league. I mean, I'd love to know what you guys think about that analysis or perspective of what I said, because I think at the end of the day, it does hurt the players if this does happen, because like they said, what is to stop a player from actually doing it? Again, as much as I love, the way that the league is, I do feel like this stuff does hurt the business a little bit. It hurts the players that, again, don't necessarily have that power. And it then restricts the role players, I think, even more than I think these superstars realize. Because again, if for the amount of superstars there are in this league, we have to also think about the role players and the players that are just trying to make a living in this league. And again, it's not to say woe is them and things like that. I understand, athletes versus regular day workers. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone's just trying to provide money for their family. So I can never hate or be upset with players or anything well like that. And so when I think about it from that perspective, I don't necessarily think that this was a good look, and I do think that this will hurt the players in the future. So for any superstar, because again, they don't want to get burned out like they did with Ben Simmons. They don't want to do the James Harden route again. Kevin Durant was going to do the same thing. They don't want superstars. For what it's worth, Ben Simmons is an all-star, right? They don't want their all hard cap versus no cap in our videos, right? Like the players are going to get the max because they don't want to lose the asset value. But if they don't play, it hurts their value to not play. And let's see here. You said Pete goes on to say, now that I think about it, I really think KD just got cold feet on playing it through. He's the best situation on paper, basketball wise, in Brooklyn, and any other team would have to give up too much. And you're exactly right. I mean, if you really think about how much these other teams have to really give up, these players are not going to want to give up that money. Like that, and that's the thing too. You got to remember, Kevin Durant is in the best situation. He's getting paid like an NBA freaking legend. He's getting the team that actually is not badly constructed. They're probably just missing some rebounders and probably people that could crash the boards. And three, you're playing with your best friend or quote unquote best friend, right? With Kyrie Irving, and you have a head coach who basically does whatever you want, and an owner and a GM that is going to basically cater to you for your whole career. Kevin Durant was in the best situation again. And, that's what Kevin Durant was looking for. It's funny to me when I really think about it because Kevin Durant actually went from best situation to best situation for him, right? He went to Golden State, won the championships, won the stuff that he felt like was a void in his career. Felt, you know what? I really do feel that void again, like Chris Haynes talked about in the Some Dude show with Cuffs, the legend. It's the same thing. He felt that he had a void, and I think Chris Haynes talked about it. Kevin Durant had this void, so he went to Brooklyn. Now in Brooklyn, he got everything he wanted. He got the coach, he got the players, he got the owner, he got the GM, he got the best of all of everything, and he still can't be happy. It makes no sense to me why he can't be happy with everything that he's gotten so far. And again, if like I said, if I'm Patrick Beverley, why would I not be upset? Why would I not be looking at Kevin Durant a certain way? Why, because again, Patrick Beverley is a role player. It's not a shot or disrespect, but it's the same thing as like celebrities versus just regular people. The amount of celebrities there are versus regular people is the same thing with NBA superstars and NBA, role players or players that, aren't necessarily making the biggest money in the world. It's the same thing. Like these players like Patrick Beverley, these players like Royce O'Neal who got traded to there. I'm just trying to think of just regular role players. Like those guys are not making that much money, and I feel like by them doing this, it allows the role players to be even more restricted than they already are. Because again, role players have to play a certain role on the team. This isn't necessarily a situation where, you know, Patrick Beverley is going to get a big contract because he's an all around great player. He has his special talents, right? Defense and on ball defense, and that's really it. And it's the same thing for example for Royce O'Neal. He's a 3-and-D guy. He's not necessarily going to be a guy that takes people off the dribble, even though he probably could do that at times. The superstars are the best players at it, and so again, I think what is frustrating for me personally when it comes to this whole situation is the fact that these players continuously get screwed over time to time by the superstar players like Kevin Durant, who are continuing this sort of I don't even know what you describe it as, but it seems to me that it is not a great situation if I was Kevin Durant. It's not a great situation. Sure, no, Kevin Durant's in a great situation. It's not a great situation if you're a role player. Like these guys are in free agency. I mean, let's look at the NBA free agents right now, currently. And let's look at the top free agent, the free agency tracker right now. Let's look at it. And again, don't worry about the guys that are signed, but you got guys like Carmelo Anthony, you got guys like Trevor Ariza, DJ Augustine, Joel Ayayi, DeAndre Ayton already signed. But think about like Ken Bazemore, Bembry. Like these guys are role players that a lot of teams could potentially use for their roster. And the fact that again Kevin Durant kind of froze the market, didn't allow these guys to get signed yet because everyone was thinking, oh, we're thinking about signing Kevin Durant. We can get him. But at the end of the day, they're not going to get him. And I just think that it is frustrating that Kevin Durant sort of, I would say, what was I going to say? Like it's frustrating that Kevin Durant basically did the old bait and switch and just kind of allowed this news to simmer, allowed it to fizzle out, allowed teams to try and trade. Meanwhile, none of it was true. And again, it fooled me, it fooled the rest of the media, it fooled anybody that was covering the sport right now because again, it's news. Everyone's been clamoring for this free agency stuff. Everyone's been clamoring for big moves and big trades. Again, the big stuff was already done with the Rudy Gobert. And I still think that thing froze the whole market because again, it allowed teams to really think like, okay, this is what they got for Rudy Gobert. It allowed teams like the Brooklyn Nets to get big headed and to think, oh yeah, Well, if Rudy Gobert is going for that, Kevin Durant should go for way more. But again, we have to remember the age, the contract situation. Kevin Durant is going to be 34, 35 years old next season. And as much as I think that he does have LeBron-esque game to him in terms of, being able to beat Father Time, it's going to be hard for Kevin Durant to continue to play like he does because of the lower leg injuries. I mean, he's had a couple of them now in his later career. Again, not saying that he's not going to be an effective player, but I don't think Kevin Durant is necessarily the guy again to play, 82 games all the time. Like he's going to need his breaks because again, the feet have been an issue time and time out throughout his later half, the later 30s in his career. That's been a big issue for him. And again, I respect Kevin Durant as a player, but I don't respect the way that he's gone about doing it the way that he's done so far. So, I mean, that's kind of my kind of bit so far for today's video. So today's live stream is really talking about the whole Kevin Durant situation because I really do think that it is a very interesting and unique story. Not saying that it's necessarily, anything groundbreaking or like Kevin Durant stays. That's basically it. But what I think it just the implications of him staying really screwed over the rest of the market, really screwed over guys like Isaiah Thomas, who again tweeted out, hey, can we finally sign now? Because Kevin Durant is officially off the market. It allows now teams to think, okay, well, he's off the market. Let's see what other needs we need to fill in with guys like Isaiah Thomas or guys like Patrick Beverley. Again, even though Patrick Beverley is under contract with the Utah Jazz, I can potentially see them trying to, do a buyout and let him join a team. And I talked about the Lakers as being an option. I think Patrick Beverley wants his revenge on the Clippers, and I could see him trying to go back to the Lakers and really trying to get his revenge on the Clippers because he felt maybe the Clippers gave up on him too soon. I would love to see that rivalry. I'd love to see them battle it out in crypto.com arena, even though it should be called Staples. But let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think about this whole Kevin Durant situation? I know that this is definitely a very interesting topic because, again, from all implications, it was choose the head coach or me. Tasai went out and said, hey, I'm choosing the head coach and the GM. And it ended up just being nothing but fluff. But again, let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think of this whole situation? I'd love to know what you guys think about the Kevin Durant. Are you guys for or against what Kevin Durant was able to do? Or maybe not able to do, but are you guys, oh man, I can't talk today. It's been a long day. Do you guys agree with the way that Kevin Durant handled it, or do you think that he should have handled it a different way? Let me know in the comment section down below. And let's kind of just do some quick, I would say, little series here, just quick news and rumors. Lakers are considering signing Dennis Schroeder. I actually think that this would be a great pickup for them. Because if you remember the years that he was there in LA, I think that he did some really good things. And again, giving up that big contract, it was bold by Dennis Schroeder, and I'm sure he's regretting it ever since. I think that he should have really just signed that contract again. He played pretty well for the Lakers, and I just think that they should have just stayed with it. They should have stayed the course. But again, when you feel a certain way, when you feel like you are the top dog, or you feel like you are close to being that, and then you end up not being that, it does hurt you in the long run. But the only cost for pause I would have for the Lakers for Dennis Schroeder is you're getting a new coach in Darvin Ham. Does he play the same style as Vogel? That's the big question that Dennis Schroeder has to think about. Again, Darvin Ham has talked about AD or Anthony Davis being the focus of the offense this next year. So I'm curious to see whether or not Dennis Schroeder can fit that plan, because I do think that he is pretty good, and I think that he could potentially be a good, rotation guy for the Lakers if he does sign there. And especially if they can get Kyrie Irving. Again, I'm not sure how it's going to happen, but I'm sure they could find a way to do it. But he would be a good guy off the bench to, kind of replace Kyrie Irving for the minutes for a little bit as he rests, and then you bring in Dennis Schroeder. You bring in Kyrie Irving back into the lineup as soon as he gets his rest. Other news that we have here, we have a stalemate. The Knicks and Jazz in a stalemate over a number of unprotected picks. This is, of course, from Mark Berman of the New York Post. The Jazz and the Knicks are in a stalemate over a number of unprotected first-round picks to include in the Donovan Mitchell trade. Shams reported earlier that the Knicks have recently offered Evan Fournier, Obi Toppin, and 5 first-round picks for Donovan Mitchell. 2 of the picks and the deal are protected on first round. Here's what I will say about the Knicks and what they need to be careful of. They need to be careful that this is not another Carmelo Anthony 2.0. And the reason why I say that is because if you really think about how much of the depth that they gave up, how much of the picks that they gave up when they could have had some really good picks this next coming year, they need to really slow down and think, okay, is Donovan Mitchell, Julius Randle, and RJ Barrett, are they the future of the New York Knicks? Can they carry the Knicks to not only just a playoff run, they need to carry them to an NBA Finals. Again, giving up that much for Donovan Mitchell, giving up all that stuff, it basically says Donovan Mitchell has to be the number one guy on the team. And I think we've talked about it before. And Pete, maybe when I get back, we'll talk a little bit more about it. But I guess the question now becomes, is Donovan Mitchell a number one in your eyes? Because I think the problem that I've had with Mitchell in the past is I feel like he's taken a lot of shots in the playoffs with but not really being efficient with those shots, right? He would score 25 points but on 20 shots. Like that's not an efficient player. I need Donovan Mitchell to be a little bit more efficient when he plays out there. And that's my only concern about Donovan Mitchell. I think he does all the other great things. I think he's a great shot creator. I think he's a great shooter. I think he actually plays really well. I just think he needs someone else as a partner in crime to take those shots away from. Again, I don't mind him taking, 18 to 20 shots, but he needs to make sure that he's efficient with those shots. And I think that by adding another superstar that can score the rock, it adds a little bit more, I would say, protection for him by not having to be overt on offense, always having to go all out 110,000% on the offensive end. But I would love to know what you guys think in the comment section down below of this video or on this live chat. Is Donovan Mitchell the number one in your eyes, or if he goes to the New York Knicks? If you're a Knicks fan, Pete, I mean, what are you thinking, man? Are you thinking that this guy is going to be the future? Are you thinking that you're giving up way too much for Mitchell? Is this Carmelo Anthony 2.0? I'd love to know Pete and New York Knicks fans' comments in the comment section down below of this video. And let's make sure that we're not missing anything else in the storyline. Let's go back to Real GM, see if there's anything else that we can talk about. Again, talked about here. Signaled that he won't be traded. Not really much in the news, man. Not really much in the news here. Let's go to one more source before we get out of here. Again, I do apologize that this is not a long live stream, but just kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about what's been going on in the news. Pete said, I like Donovan Mitchell a lot next to RJ. I don't like Donovan Mitchell next to Brunson, but I still make a trade, to be honest. Mitchell's much better than anyone we've had in years. So I guess here's the question that I have, Pete, and maybe this is much better if we do like a live stream where we talk about it. Do you think that Mitchell can be your number one? Is he a guy that exudes that number one mentality? Do you think that he could be the number one option on your team? Or do you think that you have to kind of step back a little bit and think, okay, maybe he's really not the number one option? Again, because I think if we really look and step back, maybe this does allow guys like, what's his name, Julius Randle, to kind of take a little bit step back from the offense and really kind of be a complementary piece to Donovan Mitchell and RJ Barrett. I feel like that might be Julius Randle's best role, is to kind of be a complementary piece to those guys as the third option. Because I don't necessarily think that he's a bad player, but you also have to make sure that when it comes to a guy like Julius Randle, he can't be your number one guy. And it's not necessarily think that he can't do it. It's just I think it takes a lot out of him, and you can clearly see that he was gassed after a year of doing it consistently. Now he's got to do it another year. I just don't think that he's necessarily ready for that type of responsibility. But maybe Mitchell is, maybe RJ Barrett is. Again, I'm not so high. I think RJ Barrett's good. I think a lot of people underrated him because they thought that he was overrated. But I think now he's kind of rated exactly where I think he was. A good player, but can he take that next step? That's the biggest question mark, in my opinion, for the Knicks moving forward. And I just want to make sure there's no other news I'm losing out on. Let's go to Hoops Hype. Just make sure that there's no other type of things to talk about. They look forward to the partnership together. Fine. Bojan Bogdanovic, I think, would be a great addition. And Patrick Beverley on the Lakers' radar. I think those two guys would actually be a really good combination. Pete, you said, I think he can be our number one for now, but championship-wise, no, he's not a number one. But you have to start somewhere. Randall, RJ, Mitchell, and Brunson is a hell of a starting lineup, though, if you can bring one person in, one person. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I do think that that would be a good, uh, that actually would be a good thing for them. I think if they could do that, if they do bring in, because I think it would be a good lineup. Now, is it a finals appearance type of lineup? Probably not. I still think that I need to see a little bit more of consistency from Mitchell's side of not chucking up so many shots. RJ Barrett, again, you have two guys that are volume shooters in RJ Barrett and Donovan Mitchell. I question whether or not those two guys can coexist with one another in terms of, are they able to not take all the shots all the time? That's my biggest concern, as I would say a fan. Like if I was a Knicks fan, that would be my biggest concern is, can those two guys do it? We still have a ton of assets if that rumor trade package gets done. Yeah, I think you could probably get, maybe a couple things. I'm not sure who else is in your radar, Pete, in terms of signings. Maybe we'll talk about that in our preseason rankings and talk about who's the top teams, who are the worst teams. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And then obviously we'll get Tyrese on the show as well. And kind of do a three-person tandem. Sean, if you want to get involved, I would love to have you on as well. Really talk about your Grizzlies in the West a little bit more. That's kind of where I want your expertise, Sean, more. I want you to talk about your Grizz. I feel like you know them a lot more than your other teams that you have. But it would be fun to kind of talk to you guys in person about it. And again, let's really quickly look at these. If anything is going on. Nets have not lowered their asking price. Memphis not willing to include Desmond Bane or Jaren Jackson Jr. in offers. Again, that is the thing that the Celtics, again, I continue to say this. I continue to say this time and time again. The Celtics had the best trade package for Kevin Durant, and if the Nets say no to it, that just goes to tell you that there was no way that the Nets were ever going to trade, or sorry, the Nets were never going to trade Kevin Durant in the first place. Because I feel like that offer from the Celtics to Brooklyn was a pretty good offer. Again, an aging superstar, still a good player, but aging. You're able to get this young guy who's about 27, almost 28, going to be entering, he's already in his prime. That would be the next future of the Nets. But again, I think at the end of the day, it comes back to what these guys want. And I just don't think that what they necessarily want in the Brooklyn Nets was to restart. They were considering being such a high option. And I think that's the reason why this trade was all bunk, is because the Nets kept a high asking price because they knew that they were never going to lose Kevin Durant. He's 1 year into his deal. They were never going to give him up. And I just think at the end of the day, what it comes down to, let me just make sure. Okay. Yeah, just want to make sure there was nothing else going on. But again, kind of the high asking price and the stalemate that the Brooklyn Nets have, there was no way that they were going to get rid of Kevin Durant or even trade him or even kind of lower their offer or lower their stance on, okay, we'll take this trade. Because again, I really think that the Celtics had the best offer for them. And the fact that they didn't take it goes to show you that they weren't really serious about trading. They were really just kind of, again, keeping it high so teams would be like, oh, well, I'm not sure if I really want to give that up for Kevin Durant. Or maybe fool people into getting that. But I just don't think teams are smarter now, man. Teams are not going to repeat what happened in Brooklyn in 2011. Like, they're not going to repeat that same story. Maybe the Rudy Gobert trade could be like that, but I do think that that team would be an interesting tandem. I want to do a little more research on that, but again, it kind of is what it is at this point. And let's just make sure there's nothing else to talk about. Again, I talked about it. The other news I really want to talk about was this story from this I would say last week. I don't know if it was definitely this week at some point, but he did have a recent interview. Jayson Tatum, that is, had a recent interview with Taylor Rooks from Bleacher Report, talking about how Jayson Tatum said that he played with a non-displaced wrist fracture in the end of last season. Tatum said that he played injured for about 2 months to play in the regular season. The Boston Star said he re-injured his wrist in the second round of the playoffs when he got fouled by Giannis of the Bucks. Tatum said that re-injury occurred when he fell following a dunk that he found by Antetokounmpo. I think that this is a tough thing because again, I was critical of Jayson Tatum, and not so the fact that I think that he necessarily it wasn't the fact that he was not afraid to shoot or anything like that. I just don't think that he really played with the basketball, IQ and moves that he needs to do for the Boston Celtics. I think as much as these moves are cool, and much as we look at the trainers, Chris Hanley and all these other guys that do these crazy kind of just ISO moves. The thing that really wins basketball games is the way that the Warriors played. They played solid, fundamental, and really, and by fundamental, I mean they didn't do anything flashy or extra, right? Because you saw what happened when they did that. You saw what happened when Steph Curry was dancing around and at the top of the key, and then finally got a shot off. It was a long 2-pointer that missed, and that's something that the Celtics were looking forward to. And again, the whole balance was teetered on that game four. And as soon as the Celtics lost that game four, the Warriors had the advantage at the end of the day. And we could be mad, we could be frustrated, we could be upset, but at the end of the day, they outplayed us. They outplayed us. It's just that simple. And again, I would love for Jayson Tatum to play. Again, not saying that he has to get rid of those moves, but I want him to play more fundamentally sound in terms of not trying to do the extra stuff when it doesn't need to happen. He needs to learn how to play with Jaylen Brown too, because I feel like and I'm hoping that Udoka can really convince those two guys. I might have to catch a game out here in Boston. Unfortunately, it's August, so there's no preseason games going on. But I need to catch a game, in the next couple of months, and I want to actually see how they play. And we'll have to do a league pass thing. I know Pete and I are thinking about watching the start of the NBA season, so I'm excited for that. But I really want to watch and really monitor the situation at hand when it comes to the Brooklyn Nets, or sorry, not Brooklyn Nets, but the Boston Celtics, and see if they can coexist with one another. I think that that's something that I would love for those two guys to kind of team up with. Like I would have loved if Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum would have came out to Seattle and played together in the Pro Am, because I think it would have done a little bit great. Again, we'll talk about the. I think I'll talk about the event with Pete when we get back next week, because I really want to talk about it more so in terms of I think that the Seattle area missed a great opportunity to really open up what would have been a great atmosphere and things like that. But again, we'll talk about it next week, I think, with Pete, because I really want to get into the details of what happened, not only from the fans' perspective that camped out outside, but also what happened on the inside as well, because there was a lot of commotion and chaos in there as the game could not continue. But here's what I will say to kind of end it. I think that injuries will always be a valid concern. I know Steph Curry dealt with it, and the 2016 people will say, "Oh, well, those don't count." And again, injuries are going to happen. You're never going to be 100% healthy, and I don't want to make an excuse for Tatum, but I think to me it wasn't the fact that the injury wrist was the biggest issue with him. I think it was the fact, and maybe it was because if you really think about it, he couldn't really pass the ball. Maybe he couldn't really shoot the ball well. And again, I don't want to make excuses. The Celtics lost that series in Game 4 because they lost the momentum. But at the end of the day, I'm excited for the NBA season. It will be a fun thing to look at. And again, we're going to do a preview and prediction show when I get back. Again, if any other breaking news comes out, I will obviously be here on the stream. But for the most part, you're going to get some videos that I recorded a couple weeks back and put them out on the show. We're going to talk about Bronny tomorrow, unless breaking news happens, and I'll probably get back on the live stream. But you'll check out that Bronny video that will come out tomorrow. But anyway, guys, like I said, my name is Bernie. Thank you once again for joining me here on The Charge. Sorry it wasn't such a long video today, or even if it was announced, but I thought, let's talk about this Kevin Durant ordeal and talk about how he really did fool the media in everything that he did. But before we get going, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, all that stuff equals a situation where we can grow the channel, grow it organically, and I want us to create a basketball community that is really together and knows how to play the game, and knows how to really like, again, I want this to be a communication part where we talk about it with other people. Again, shout out to Sean, shout out to Pete, who are in the chat, talking it up, chatting it up. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode of the Charge live stream. Anyway, guys, hope you have a great week. Again, if there's something breaking, I'll be out here again on the stream. But other than that, guys, we'll catch you